1988 was a big year for Sunrise. Mobile Suit Gundam Char's Counterattack would release early in the year and is still known as a landmark entry in the Gundam franchise to this day. But along with Gundam, Sunrise would release a 7-episode OVA known as Mobile Police Patlabor. Quick editor's note here, it's Patlabor. I keep saying Patlabor in my brain. I apologize, my bad, sorry, I'm embarrassed. Okay, go on. It would later become known as the Early Days OVA and serve as the foundation of a multimedia franchise that would release OVAs, manga, TV, anime, and full-length movies. This small 7-episode experience would give potential fans a taste of what the franchise's tone and themes would be in the future, and overall it's just a really fun piece of mecha history. Even before talking about the show itself, there are interesting forces at play. Patlabor was created by a group of creators at Sunrise that called themselves Headgear. In layman's terms, it was a small creative union of writers, directors, and animators who aimed to make the creative forces in the industry retain the rights to their IP. It was a pretty noble goal, and a quite interesting one at that. While their influence never really reached far outside the Patlabor series, they were able to retain the rights to the franchise and steer it in the direction that they all wanted. Mobile Police Patlabor takes place in the near future of 1998. It's a world where man-piloted mechs have found a place within not only military and heavy construction work, but in the civilian world as well. These mecha are called labors, and of course with the rise of such a machine comes the rise of labor-related crimes. Due to this, the Tokyo Metropolitan Police creates the Special Vehicles Section 2, or Sv2 for short. This group of pilots, officers, and mechanics would use their specialized patrol labors to deter the ever-increasing crime rate. Set in a time of economic unrest and civil change, Patlabor portrays a world that remains grounded on the outside, but allows itself to get weird here and there. And while you may think that Patlabor is some sort of police story or a crime drama procedural, what it really is something far more interesting. It turns out that the Early Days OVA is basically a slice-of-life comedy focusing on our brand new unit within SV2. While the show does have moments of action and conspiracy, its real aim is to introduce you to this world and these characters, really get the hooks into you for when they release movies and other media later on. The story of Patlabor is more like a collection of single-episode vignettes that follow our group of SV2 officers in their daily lives while they experience all of the things that come with the job. This gets a little weird later, what with the episodes where they go ghost hunting and negotiate with a giant handsome sea monster, but mostly it's pretty normal stuff. What this serves to do is give the audience ample time to really get to know the cast, and let the cast get to know each other. An example I like to use for this is actually One Piece. Now, love it or hate it, you cannot deny that One Piece is incredibly successful, and one of the reasons for that success is it's just fun to watch the cast of characters interact with each other. Of course, this formula pretty much requires the show to have likable and engaging characters for this approach to work at all. Luckily, the core group of characters that we spend time with in Patlabor are great to watch interact, and though the OVA doesn't have ample time to get very deep with many of them, we do get a great foundation for what would come in the future. In fact, I would actually go so far as to say that even the supporting characters are all likable and well written. Even people with a minuscule amount of screen time have quirks that will stick out. Patlabor also does something really tricky with some of its characters' backgrounds. It has a habit of telling the audience just enough that they can fill in the blanks without divulging all of the details. The show simply doesn't have the time to go into everything, and its solution is to let you naturally come to your own conclusions about the characters. For instance, Izumi, the newest member of SV2, can be seen at home where her father runs a liquor store. Her mother is never shown nor mentioned, and her father's drinking is only mentioned in offhand remarks by another character. But just from that setup, it's easy to infer how Izumi may have gone down the path that led her to being a police officer. It just goes to show that the writing in Patlabor does a lot to carry the show, which makes sense considering that the action, while well animated, is sporadic and short-lived. The first episode of Mobile Police Patlabor opens with the chief mechanic of SV2 eagerly awaiting the arrival of two brand new patrol labor units. Unfortunately, most of Tokyo in the dark future of 1998 is a constant traffic jam and the mechs are stuck in traffic. However, along with the arrival of the new labors comes the arrival of SV2's brand new second unit. Staffed entirely with rookies and led by a man who looks like he would rather be asleep or high. Me too, Goto. Me too. The new arrivals consist of Hiromi Yamazaki, the giant but soft-spoken man who becomes the driver for Unit 1's carrier truck. Shinzi is the bespectacled driver of the Unit 2 carrier and spends most of his time doting over his rather overbearing wife. Oda is the loudmouthed, gun-happy pilot of Patrol Labor Unit 1, and he's the one that causes the most trouble for SV2, despite wanting to essentially be a super cop. Finally, we have Noa Izumi and Asuma Shinohara, the former being a labor-obsessed pilot who has an almost unhealthy obsession with her unit, which she calls Alphonse, and the latter being the son of a labor tech company CEO who gives off the impression that he'd rather be anywhere else, although he's the first one to look out for his friends and actually mates a very competent police officer. These four spend their first few days on the force getting used to the life at the SV2 headquarters, which happens to be on the outskirts of Tokyo. Oda immediately demands that Captain Goto let him go to shooting practice using one of the first unit's labors. The captain explains that due to multiple levels of bureaucracy, they can only expect to practice about once a year, and Goto freaks out, as his character will continue to do for the rest of the series. While the unit is on night duty, an emergency dispatch order comes from HQ as a stolen labor is making its way down a highway. SV2 has to go and pick up their labors, which are still stuck in traffic, and then corner the stolen labor. Unfortunately, Oda fulfills his trigger-happy fantasies and fires upon the mysterious labor, missing and destroying several squad cars in the process. This leaves Noah to chase the labor down, losing an arm in the process. I kinda love that this show shows how SV2 is almost never completely successful. They tend to fumble their way through situations, which makes the flow of the episodes more dynamic and unpredictable. I want to mention that this show is actually also really funny. The dialogue is well-paced and snappy, and the characters always respond in a way that is completely unique to them. The writers just seem to have a concrete idea of every character's backstory and personality, and it really shines through in their interactions. Let me just show this conversation between Asuma and Izumi from the end of the first episode.
Hey, I thought you said I had the advantage.
Now, did I say that?
Yeah, you did.
Well, it must have been, inspirational.
I beat a 3-armed labor with just one.
Huh? Weren't those legs?
The dialogue has a tendency to rely on quick back and forth between the two characters, and even with the dub, which is a little awkward, you can see how the conversations flow and don't have weird pauses. SV2 is put on security duty as the mayor of New York City is visiting Tokyo. I love that Tokyo is just a complete traffic jam pretty much all the time in this show. Izumi ends up working on her day off in order to pick up an NYPD police sergeant, Kanuka Clancy. Kanuka is actually a pretty great character. As an experienced officer, she quickly takes charge of the newer members of SV2, but she also serves as a bit of a fish out of water, trying to adjust to life in Japan as an Asian American. This episode serves up a bit of exposition as the audience learns that eco-terrorism is at an all-time high due to something called the Babylon Project. The world of Patlabor is in quite rough shape, as the polar ice caps have melted due to accelerated global warming, and a series of large earthquakes have racked Japan in recent years. The Babylon Project aims to reclaim a ton of land in Tokyo Bay, and has sparked a ton of civil unrest and an increased crime rate. The episode carries on until Asuma figures out that a mobile command center that he spotted in the park was actually a disguised missile launcher. Along with the help of both Izumi and Kanuka, he is able to disarm the bomb just in time, and it's revealed that the terrorist was an old lady all along. Asuma wants to quit the SV2 after this admittedly harrowing experience, but he decides to stay when Kanuka announces that she'll be part of the team for a full year. The next 2 episodes are almost completely slice-of-life situations that help to flesh out the characters with side stories. One has Oda destroying a video rental store with his labor's gun.
You're public servants, people. Public servants.
Requiring SV2 to attend a compulsory training camp, where they end up hunting down a ghost. And then SV2 ends up working with a mad scientist in order to stop a large and, very handsome sea monster from wreaking havoc in the bay. Yeah, these 2 episodes do kind of go off the rails, but when you consider the tone of the show, it sort of makes sense in a weird way. Plus, the Sea Monster episode is just a straight-up homage of classic Godzilla and other kaiju films. It's here at episode 5 and 6 that Mobile Police Patlabor takes a almost completely different tone. The comedy is still there, but it shifts to be something much more serious as SV2 has to deal with an almost complete takeover of Tokyo by a terrorist cell. I'm actually going to use the Yakuza games as a parallel here because the Yakuza games are able to swing from super serious crime stories to incredible ridiculousness with a huge amount of success.
どや楽しんどるが最高のプレイやろ何もかも忘れてたっぷり甘えてんじゃ
進ちゃん勝手に外したらダメでちゅよ
ああバブバブ
Much like Yakuza, Patlabor excels in letting its characters carry the humor even in stressful situations. Because they went this way with this style of humor, it's believable and also stressful when the cast is put into more serious situations. When the Japanese Ground Self-Defense Force takes over the SV2 headquarters, as well as most of Tokyo under the command of a man named Kai, SV2 Captain Goto also goes missing at this time, and it's revealed that he was college friends with the series' antagonist. While the audience is under the impression that Goto is still on the police's side, he has a warrant out for his arrest. With the rest of SV2 speeding back to Tokyo after being on leave, it falls to Izumi and Asuma to grab Alphonse, their only available labor, and use it to try and bring order. We also see the trio of Oda, Kanuka, and Shinso stealing an older labor from the police academy and using Kanuka's connections with the US to grab a helicopter-mounted machine gun. The trio attempt to use this to break the military blockade to regroup with the others, but are unfortunately unsuccessful. It is cool, though. It's revealed that the group of rebels have stolen a nuclear missile owned by the US Air Force, and after some detective work, Goto guesses that it is located on one of 2 stolen ferries located nearby. In a joint effort with the labor construction company that was kind of at fault for this whole thing, SV2 is able to borrow a prototype paratrooper labor. With the strong and silent Hiromi piloting it, they literally fire it out of a submarine, hoping the rebels wouldn't expect an attack from below. Izumi, who's piloting Alphonse as a distraction, is able to arrest Kai and put an end to the insurrection. These 2 episodes are the meat of the narrative of SV2's story. However, because of the time that we've spent with the characters in day-to-day situations, and some outlandish ones, it makes the drama and intensity seem more earned than if this were just a straight-up action cop show. The final episode of the show sees SV2 chase down a stolen vehicle containing a prototype labor. In a weird twist of fate, the stolen truck gets stolen again. Yep, it's a double threat. This leads the driver to be super confused at why the cops are trying so hard to stop him, but he ends up helping in the end, working to save Izumi at the last second. Seems like the corporation that wanted to help clean up their mess really just wanted to destroy any evidence, and they turn on Izumi as soon as it's convenient. While this final episode seems more like a story that would take place in the middle of the show's runtime, it does leave us with a more hopeful outlook as opposed to leaving us with the entire city under siege. As an introduction to the characters and state of the world, Mobile Police Patlabor does a great job. If anything, this franchise has a great foundation, which makes me pretty excited to further explore the series. So there we have a look at Mobile Police Patlabor. The OVA from 1988 is a pretty breezy and fun affair that had me drawn in right from the start. Like I said, it just had that effect where I wanted to see the characters interact more and more. So I'm very excited to continue to cover this franchise in the near future. Next up is a video that was decided upon by community vote. A few weeks ago I asked you guys to vote among a few different options for a series that you'd like me to cover. Well, with over 200 votes, Trigun came out on top with 40%. I really enjoyed this idea and I think you guys did too, so I'm gonna continue to do this sort of thing in the future. Look out for a community vote in the near future, and as always, there will be plenty of Gundam content releasing every month. Thank you all for watching this video. If you have a series that you'd like to be added to the community vote, please go ahead and leave a comment down below, and I'll start compiling a list of the community favorites. Until then, we will see you next time. Thank you.